return unto Hashem. Everyone's now getting to the whole Elo mode, and all over you see in the street, it's Oro Tshuvah, Tzeret Tshuvah. Everyone's talking about Tshuvah, and everyone is in the whole Tshuvah mode. But everyone's looking just for that one word, that one sentence, that one line, maybe that one song, that one word that will bring us back, V'shuvu al Hashem, to actually return to Hashem. So we should be zoch a little bit in this hour that we have together, to literally take those words. That's how Shlomo would explain a little bit the pasuk, V'shuvu al Hashem. We should find that one note, that one key, that one niggin, that really brings us closer. So we got to open up with return again. Start on the normal
return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again. Return to the land of your soul. Return to you are, return to where you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Return to whom you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Return again, return again. I return to the land of your soul. I return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. I return to you, I return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Return to you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. On Shabbos we read, Re'ei Anochi noten lefnechem hayom. Behold, I'm giving before you today. Not only Rav Shlomo in his unbelievable creative way touched up the pasuk, understood the pasuk. Hey, look, you know what I'm giving you as a gift today? Anochi. I'm giving you that vision of who you are. I'm giving you a vision of what you could be. Anochi noten lifnechem hayom. Sometimes we have a good vision of ourselves the way we were. Sometimes we have a vision of my current situation. I can look myself in the mirror. But it's very, very hard to get that future vision of yourself. So beginning of Chodesh Elul Shabbos, Mevarchim Elul, 2 weeks ago we read, Rei Anochi, Shlomo would teach, Noten Lefnechem Hayom. What am I giving before you? I'm giving you that gift to get a little vision of who you are, of what you are, of where you could really go, and where we could really go this year. So we should always, as we're learning tonight, get that vision. And tonight, we're going to learn a Torah from Rav Kook, a Torah from Orot Tshuvah. And it's a shir I heard from Moshe Weinberger from the 5 Towns from Eish Kodesh. Of course, we'll infuse a lot of Rav Shlomo into it, of course, to bring even more neshama to such a piece that's so full of neshama. And at the same time, it's really a question of how much of my past am I allowed, am I supposed to bring into my Tshuvah process? What happens with my past when I'm doing Tshuvah? Most people, when we think about Tshuvah, how do we look sometimes at our past? Most people look a little bit, imagine someone says, I'm about Tshuvah. There's a halacha that when someone says, I'm a returnee, I'm someone who fixed my mistakes, now you're supposed to remind him of his past. You're not supposed to tell him, I remember you when you were in the 11th grade and we hung out in this place and you did X, Y, and Z. You're not supposed to remind about Tshuvah of his past.
Let's think about the first quote, Holy Baal Tshuvah, that we read about in the Torah. Who was the first to break away from his past? Avram Avinu. And Avram, when he broke away from his father Terach, he had to really make an unbelievable break from his past. What was the first thing God made him do? Or told him to do? Breaking that is a little bit more from the Medrash, but even on a pshat level, on a simple textual level, the first thing he had to do was change his country. He had to change his place. Shinui Makom, to move from Haran to the land I will show you, which Baruch Hashem showed all of us that land, that's why we're here today. And he had the vision, God willing, won't just be a visit, it'll be the permanent. First thing was he had to change his location. You don't read about Avram going back to visit his father Terach. You don't even read about Terach coming to visit his son Avram. It was a complete break from the past. You don't even read about him sending an email or a postcard to Terach from the Holy Land. It was a complete breakaway. What else did Avram have to do in that same Parsha of Lech Lecha, connected to his past? Just think, what else did Avram have to do connected to the past? Besides changing his place, what else did he have to change?
His name.
Very good, he had to change his name. He changed his name from Avram to Avraham. From Avram to Avraham. And in fact, the Gemara says at the end of the first chapter, Masechet Brachot, that if someone calls Avram instead of Avram, he's over Naseh, he's over positive commandment, because it says, Lo yikara od shimcha Avram ki im Avraham. You can no longer use that old name. You can't use your name of the past. You have to what? Use the name of Avram. You can't go back to your past name. So it seems from Avram Avinu that what? There has to be, they have to sort of say, look at the headquarters of the first person, the first Jew, and his becoming a monotheist, his becoming God's representative in the world. It seems to be a complete breakaway from what? Complete break with his past. Nothing to do with his past. But we all know that there's also sometimes a little fear to that. Now, sometimes, old people are always obsessed with the past. Young people, that's all they talk about. Do you remember when? I remember when, in the good old days, it was like this. Young people are always talking about what? The future. Very few people, by the way, are present. And very few people are here at the moment. But at the same time, we're going to see a little bit tonight of how to take the past and use your past and use it into what? Building that better future. Not just burying the past, but a lot of people also, especially younger people, when you talk to them about what? Doing Tshuvah, right away they think it means cutting my wings, cutting away from myself, cutting away from who I am. I'm afraid if I start becoming from, I'm just making it up, if I start, even on an external level, wearing only skirts, if I start only dressing a certain way, if I stop only hanging out with certain people, if I stop watching certain types of shows, if I start eating only certain types of food, then a certain part of me becomes what? Becomes lost in the process. And a little bit, I'm afraid of drawing near to you, Hashem, because as I draw near to you, a certain part of my life and my personality also gets what? Lost in that whole process. And therefore, a lot of people put a machson, they say, stop, listen, don't stop trying to change me. Let me be who I am. And right away we think Tshuvah means, yes, it does mean certain things have to change, but does your essence have to change? Does your essence of who you are and your character trait and your personality, does that really have to change? We spoke about Avram having to change his country, trying to change his name. But there's still the thing of Vayom Hashem Avram, he still was Brother Abe. He still was Avram Avinu. He still was that Avram, a certain part of him that maybe never ever changed. So we'll see a little bit from different sources, that those who say you have to completely bury your past, and those who say you have to what? Maybe take the past and put our past into what? Into our future, and combine that past and future. But I think all of us a little bit relate to this question. Sometimes when we're looking to spiritually grow, we're afraid sometimes of even losing my old friends. How will my relationship with my parents be? How will my friends relate? Will they think I flipped out, that I completely, went off the deep end? How will people relate? And does it have to be that way? Or could I still maintain a little bit, some of my past,
or a certain part of my past in my current. So we'll start, the most classic source of learning in Tshuvah is what? Very good, the Rambam, Hilchot Tshuvah. And we'll start with a piece from the Rambam, Hilchot Tshuvah. There's someone said that my father, all they teach is Rav Shlomo, and in the yeshiva, so we're learning Rambam, Hilchot Tshuvah also, and everything, everything starts, obviously, from the source. So let's look a little bit how the Rambam looks at the Baal Tshuvah. How the Rambam look at someone who's going through the Tshuvah process. And again, we go to Perek Shvi, the 7th chapter, Halacha Vav, the sixth law, and I put a little like brackets around it. And the first word there is the word emesh. Anyone want to try to read? Or
Where are we?
any volunteers or victims?
You put brackets in the text.
I put brackets in the text.
It's
Yeah.
about 2/3 the way
down
down.
there. Oh, and
Yeah. Let's see if we could. I don't have any more brackets now. I see even myself. I don't have. B'chavod. Anyone want to try? Anyone who's more comfortable with reading?
I can try.
Okay. B'chavod. Yeah.
Okay. אמש היה זה שנעול לפני המקום משקיץ,
Mishukatz.
ומרחוק בתואבה.
Okay, so the Rambam is describing the Baal Tshuvah. And the Rambam used very, very extreme language. Even though the Rambam was a halachic authority, he's using a lot of adjectives here. And describing the one before he said, Emesh means what? Yesterday. Hayazeh sanui. Sanui means what? He was hated. Lifnei hamakom, before God. Basically, this person who was sinning, he was hated before Hashem. Mishukatz. Sometimes when, depending where you grew up, when you want to insult someone, they say, shegitz. He's a shegitz. A shegitz is what? So that's how they mean it, but it really comes from like a cockroach. A sheketz. A sheketz, something very abominable. Umerucha.
Shegitz means somebody that thinks different than...
You left from Williamsburg, that's how it was.
I don't know if I'd rather be a goya or a cockroach instead.
The Rambam says yesterday this guy was Mishukatz. He was son. He was hated before Hashem. Mishukatz, ugly, like a shegitz, like a cockroach. Umeruchat. The word meruchat, what's the root? Distance, far, rachok. V'to'eva. To'eva. Sometimes you see signs all over Yerushalayim. Everyone's against this to'eva, not to'eva. Against to'eva is abomination. Okay, and this yesterday he was all these negative things. And now what happens to this person? You help us out, Shira. You read excellent, by the way. Shira, you continue a little bit. Vayom. For Hayom, what happens today?
He's beloved and Nechmad.
Nechmad, we say davening yatziv v'nachon. Nechmad v'na'im v'na'ah b'adeh. There's 15 adjectives after Shema. So Nechmad means from Chamud. Chamud is what? Sweet, pleasant. Karov. Close. B'yedid. How do you say?
Friend or beloved.
Friend and beloved. Shlomo Melech's second name was Yedidya. Beloved of Hashem. Yedid. He becomes a great friend of Hashem. So based on this Rambam, guys, what would you say about the Baal Tshuvah and his past? Definitely it's from the school of thought of what? Bearing your past, no? Yesterday you were like a dirty diaper. You hold it far away from you. Sanui, mishukatz, mituav. Some type of disgusting, abominable thing. Far away from Hashem. Even an enemy of Hashem, Sanui, hated before Hashem. And today, the fact that he did Tshuvah makes him all of a sudden God's best friend. So on one hand, you see there's a transformation. But it's definitely, in the opinion of what? Moving away from what? Yeah, Emesh. Emesh was your bad scene, so to say, you're getting reborn again. And you're getting a new status now. From being this outcast before God, and now you're becoming what? Beloved, you're becoming a friend of the Almighty. Pleasant, close, Yedid. A good friend of what? A good friend of Hashem. So you see here that what? Very, very clearly, that the Rambam in Perek Shvi implies that what? It's definitely breaking away from the past. I'm going to just read, I didn't make copies of this, a different Rambam. in the second paragraph of Hilchot Tshuvah. And the Rambam is describing the way of the Baal Tshuvah. And this is a bit more familiar. A lot of us maybe heard it from different Tshuvah drashot or Shabbos Tshuvah drashot. It's not on the sheets. This I'm just reading. Midachei Tshuvah liot hashav so'ek tamid lifnei Hashem. This is good for Breslovus Hasidim. It says the way of Tshuvah is for the one who's returning. He should always be so'ek. So'ek means what? Always should be yelling and screaming before Hashem. Always be in a state of what? Shabbatenu kabelu shmatza katenu bebechi. Always crying with tachanunim and supplication. If he owes tzedakah k'fi kocha, he should give away his money to the best of his ability. U'mitrachek habei min hadava shachata bo. Move away, rachok, distance yourself from the matter in which what? Which you sin. Again, what are you doing in terms of your past? Mitrachek. What does mitrachek mean again, he said? Rachok, get away from the thing that caused you to sin. Umeshana shemo, you should change his name, like we saw Avraham Avinu. Kaloma ani acher ve'eni oto ha'ish asa ota mamasim. I'm someone else. I'm not the same person that did those not such good things. Umeshana ma'asav. He should change his actions. Kulan netova, all for good. Ulederech yeshara, and on the right path. He should change his ways. V'gole mimkomo. He should move from his previous place of sin and change his location to what? To a place. We should move places. So the Rambam again seems to take that first example of Avraham Avinu, changing your name, changing your location, moving away completely from the matter that what caused you to sin. And there it talks more the Rambam how one should do confession before other people. But there he says, when you move away, the Golet brings forgiveness to the sin. When you move away, there's an effect. When you're always on the move, when you're not stable in one place, it brings you to humility, because you realize you don't have a place. It brings you to a certain humbleness and a humble spirit. That's why a lot of people go away Yom Kippur, by the way. They don't stay in their place. The idea of Golet Mechaperet. The Golet what brings kapar to a person. So far, what? Exile, right? So he has to, like a self-exile, of moving away. Now, a lot of times when you see young people, I teach 18, 19-year-olds that come to Eretz Yisrael for the year, when the first things they do is this complete breaking away. If they had a friend that was from another gender, they stop talking to him or her. If they down with their father in the shul, now they stop dining in that shul. The shul's not good enough anymore. If they sat in a certain seat in the shul, they have to make sure to change that seat, because that's where they were talking all the time, or they had a good view of the mechitza, or etc. On the other side of the mechitza, and they always are moving away. And this is always the way, if I want to say the classic yeshiva approach has been to Tshuvah, of moving away, changing. Your emesh was meshukatz, metuav, it was disgusting, it was abomination, it was ich. And then all of a sudden something what? Now you did Tshuvah, you changed your ways, you exiled yourself, and now you're close to Hashem, you're karav and you did, and you're no longer distant, you came back and you're united with your Creator. But now let's go to a very, very famous Gemara. And even if we all know the Gemara, it's good to see it inside. There's nothing like seeing a little bit in the text. And this is from Gemara Bava Metzia. It's a very, very famous story. And it's the story of the man of strength versus the man of beauty. And the man of strength, the man of beauty was none other than, anyone know which Tana was the most beautiful Tana? Rav Yochanan. The Gemara says crazy stories about his beauty, and how when Rav Yochanan was about to die, they didn't only cry over his physical, about that soul's going to, but what beauty is going to be lost in the world. When Rav Yochanan died, beauty left the world. But to the degree, the Gemara says something so way out, that the women, before they went in the monthly cycle to the mikvah, they would either have a picture of Rav Yochanan, or Rav Yochanan himself would sit by the mikvah. And the women would look at Rav Yochanan, and they went to immerse themselves. They would think of Rav Yochanan, they want to have beautiful children like Rav Yochanan. And it didn't just mean spiritually as beautiful. That's a very strange Gemara, you know. But this story, anyway, this is the beauty of Rav Yochanan. But you see, again, Chazal were not anti-beauty. Today there's this whole thing about, the more you, I don't want to sidetrack, but the more you don't focus on the body, and the more emaciated you look, the holier you must be, and the more you don't eat and you feel. But Rav Yochanan was actually beautiful, and the Gemara says that he was actually he had a lot of flesh there. He wasn't exactly
skinny and emaciated. He was Ba Basahava. He was very healthy. Had a lot, in those days, by the way. I guess the fashion magazines look different. It was those who had more flesh were considered more beautiful. Those who had more bones were considered what? Less beautiful. Just anyone who has weight issues to make you feel good. And at the same time, anyway, seriously, Gemara says that was the beauty. Ba Basahava. He was very beautiful. Also says about a long beard that it was a hadrat panim, that it gave a certain dignity to his face. But now again, if you go to the sheet, we have 2 lines from where it gets white, and I put a little bracket around it, and the first word is Yom Echad. This is Daf Pedalid again from the tractate Bava Metzia, page 84. Anyone want to try to read from the Gemara? This is a little harder, some Aramaic here. Any volunteers? Going once, going twice, not that. I don't want anyone to be uncomfortable. You want to try?
I can translate it.
Sure.
Okay, it's always good. Even just saying the words, okay? B'chava.
יום אחד הווה כעס אחי רבי יוחנן בירדנה, חזאיה ריש לקיש ושבר לירדנה. אביטריה אמרה...
Avatre. So let's put a comma there for a second. You read very well, but Yom Echad, one day, Have Kasachi Rav Yochanan biyardena. Rav Yochanan went up to the Jordan River, and he was sachi, he was swimming. Now right away, this makes people uncomfortable in certain circles. Rav Yochanan went swimming, and there was no separate swimming in the Jordan in those days, I don't think either. Did he go kayaking? Was the what was going on there? But he was swimming there in the Jordan River. And what happened when he was swimming? Chazye Reish Lakish. Now Reish Lakish didn't grow up in yeshiva. Reish Lakish was like the number one, he was like the godfather. He had a whole gang of gangsters, and Chazi means to what? To see. Reish Lakish saw the beauty of Yochanan, and the Shavye got, just one second, my eyes are going. The Shavah the Adena Abatre, and he jumped across the Jordan River, Abatre after him, just to what? Get a glimpse of the beauty of Rav Yochanan. It was something, a sight, to see the beauty. Now we know that when a man sees a beautiful woman, he's supposed to make a bracha of Shakacha lo b'olama. And you're going on a date and you feel an attraction, you can make that bracha, and we'll see if there's a second date. But anyway, that's what the Gemara says. Shakacha lo b'olama. Thank you, Hashem, for making what? Such a beautiful creation in this world. And here, Reish Lakish says, such beauty, how could I not look at it? In other words, through the flesh of Yochanan, I could see godliness, I could see Elokus, even through beauty, even through physical beauty. There's also godliness in it. Again, everything today got very perverse, and most people, when they see a beautiful person, are making blessings. But really, the first thing is supposed to be that you make a blessing. Bless you, Hashem, King of the universe, that what? This exists in the world, such beauty exists in the world. Okay, let's continue a little bit. Amalei. Okay, let's stop for a second. Amalei, so Reish Lakish, and Rav Yochanan said to Reish Lakish, Chelech la'araita. Your strength should be used for what? La'araita is for what? Alright, if you could jump across the river, imagine what you could do in learning. If you'd use the same koach that you have, the same strength that you have, to get a glimpse of me, if you would use it for learning, could you imagine if you channeled that energy, that strength, not just to be abandoned on a highway and a rubber, but if you use that energy for what? Torah, it would be unbelievable. So Reish Lakish was no pushover. What does he say back? Okay, what does that mean? Shufrach? Your beauty should be used for what? For women. In other words, Rav Yochanan, you're such a waste. You're sitting in a base medrash with guys with the glasses, pouring over old texts. Imagine you'd be out there and market yourself. You would have girls all over you, and you would be the biggest catch in the world, Rav Yochanan. Shufraya l'nashi. Chava, what a waste of your talents and energy. You should use your beauty for what? The nashe, in order to attract women. And just, you wouldn't expect this in the Gemara. If there were more Gemaras like this, more people would be learning Gemara. But anyway, let's continue the Gemara now. Amalei. Continue. Okay, let's put a comma there. So he says, Rav Yochanan says, "Are you impressed with my beauty? If you return, and you come back, and you return, and you go and learn in yeshiva, Yavina lach achoti, I'll give you my sister to marry. Ishapira minai. She's even what? More beautiful than I am. And she's a female version of what I am. And she's more beautiful than me. So if you're willing to what? Go to sit and learn and use the strength for Torah, it's going to be okay. So what does it say now? Okay, you know what? We're going to stop the Gemara here. Kavil alayu, he was makavel upon himself to go to yeshiva. And the rest is it's a story within the story. But basically, Reish Lakish accepted, and he went to yeshiva, and he became the great Reish Lakish, who actually outlearned his brother-in-law Rav Yochanan. And throughout the Gemara, you see tremendous machloket, disagreements between Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish on understanding halachic issues, and to the degree Reish Lakish surpassed Rav Yochanan. So now let's take this Gemara on our topic about burying your past or using the past to build a better future. And based on this Gemara, we see a different approach than what the Rambam wrote. What was Rav Yochanan telling Reish Lakish to do? In which way, Chaim Meir?
Use it fast for holiness.
Very good. He didn't say. He could have told Reish Lakish, if I ever catch you working out, if I ever catch you looking in the mirror again, if I ever catch you, stealing, I mentioned that Reish Lakish also was the head of a gang that was, so to say, the most feared gang in town. And yet what happened to Reish Lakish? He didn't say bury your past. He said use your past. And take that strength and use it for what? Use it for Torah. Take that past and use it for what? For learning Torah. This is very different than what the Rambam seems to have said. And here it seems to be that what? Take that energy that you have, and this unbelievable strength and koach that you have, and don't suppress it, and don't kill it, and don't let it die out, but use it in the Beit Midrash, and use it in the Kedusha, and use it in holiness. Let's connect this idea to the first pasuk in this week's parsha. When we go, anyone remember the first topic in this week's parsha? This is a rich parsha, 74 mitzvot, and a lot, by the way, on marriage. We're talking by dinner tonight with my in-laws. Not a marriage, yibum, kiddushin. It's like almost all Even Ha'ezer, all laws of men and women, is all in this week's parsha. But there you also have the topic of a Yefat Torah. It's too complex. We could spend just a whole share on that. I don't want to sidetrack. But if a man goes out to war, and a certain type of battle called the Melchemet Reshut, an optional war it's not within the borders of Israel, and he meets a very beautiful girl, he realizes that he's not going to be able to suppress that temptation that he has for this girl. So the Torah gives you a permissible way to take the girl. But there it says, it literally means you're going to take her into captivity. But the Chassidus learns this pasuk that it means the idea of taking the Yetzer Hara and not killing it, but taking it into captivity and then channeling it and using it for what? For tremendous kedusha and for tremendous holiness. The Shavita Shiva, you're going to take it into captivity. You're going to use that midah that looks like it's a bad midah, but you're going to use that attribute and show that it never was bad. It just was mischanneled and misused. And now I could take that same attribute that was so negative and I could use it what? Into something so positive. I shared in previous years when I was here, Rav Shlomo told a story when he was in St. Louis. And he was substituting, and this is already before the first album in 1959. A little bit, his name wasn't so well known. And it was one of those classes where the first teacher got a heart attack, the second one had a nervous breakdown, the third one ran out of middle of class. And they said, Shlomo, you play guitar a little bit, maybe you could keep the kids' attention and sing and tell some stories. Now Shlomo told the story, he had the kids all around him, and it was going very, very, very well. And there was one kid that was drawing the entire class. And the entire class he was drawing pictures. At first, Rav Shlomo said naively, I thought he was taking notes. And I said, wow, this boy's really serious. The only boy is writing every word down in the notebook. And then I walked over to the desk, and let's just say not all the pictures had Malbish Harumim on it. And some of the pictures were people who unfortunately couldn't afford clothing, and it was inappropriate pictures. And if someone says this is before, I was who I am today, my first reaction was to just rip it up and tell the kid to write 100 times, I will not draw in class, and have his parents sign it and bring it to the principal the next day. All of a sudden, Shlomo says, I stopped myself. And I walked over to the boy, and I said, wow, I'm just making up a name, Chaim Yankel, you're so creative. I had no idea. You must be taking lessons for years. And where did you learn to draw so well? And the boy looked at him like, you're crazy, It's got pictures of people who are predestined and not dressed. And the Shlomo says, Chaim, unbelievable. I think those days it was a nickel. Here's a nickel. I want you to make pictures of everything we're drawing. Everything we're learning in class. I want you to make a picture, illustrate the Mishnah, illustrate what we're learning in Navi. So this is one time I heard of Shlomo tell the story, and he ended the story there. Later on, I heard of Shlomo told the same story, but he says, I was invited, and Shlomo always, if he was invited, it means there has to be one person that needs to hear what I have to say, and that would be a sign I have to go to that place, even if it was far out. He says he comes to this place for Shabbos, and he starts davening, no one's harmonizing, the place is looking at the clock, and he goes, all right, there's going to be some Shabbos here. And he starts talking there, and forget it, he took more than 5 minutes, and Rabbi put a watch in his hand, said, keep in mind, we have announcements by 5:17, and just keep it. Anyway, the whole Shabbos was till Shalashudis, and the president of the shul gets up and says, Shlomo, you don't remember me, but I remember you. And I'm the one who arranged this whole Shabbos together. And he tells long stories that I was that boy in the class. And that time when you walked up to me, and I was drawing inappropriate pictures. And then, instead of screaming at me and yelling at me, told me, Chaim Yankel, you have such unbelievable talent. You should know I became an artist, and I started eventually to sell Judaica, and I became a rich man. I never had the chance to ever thank you. It's because of you that I succeeded so much in life. And I heard, I've been following your career from a distance. I want you to come now. So you never know, but that's taking the past and using that past and turning it into something positive. Let's go to Rav Kook himself. And Rav Kook now is going to be addressing, I photocopied 2 pages from Rav Kook. And Rav Kook's Hebrew is very, very hard. And don't feel bad or think there's something, look, it's not regular, it's very poetic Hebrew. And difficult, challenging Hebrew. We'll try to learn 2 pieces from Rav Kook. From which one did I put first?
That's everyone.
You also only have one? Which one do you have there? What does it start?
Eric, you bet.
Eric? Okay, Tshuvah. Okay, so now let's go back a little bit. Tshuvah Mirima Ta'adam, over there?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll read from that sheet. It starts chapter 12. And let's see a little bit what Rav Kook is talking about. Chapter 12, where I circled it, we'll just do Ot Aleph. Now, Rav Kook was also dealing here with another phenomenon that happens. A lot of times, without stereotyping, but you don't see this so much with Rav Shlomo Cheva, Rav Nachman Cheva, with Chabad Cheva, but you see with other forms, other expressions of Tshuvah. And sometimes, when someone also starts doing Tshuvah, not only does he bury his past, there's a part of him that loses a complete spunk of life. You know how many times a boy comes there to sit with a girlfriend, they were really best friends in high school, they were sure they're going to marry each other, and then he becomes more halachic, which is great, she becomes more halachic, and certain things they shouldn't have been doing in high school, Baruch Hashem, they're keeping, but then sometimes a girl will come over and say, I just don't recognize him anymore, he's so serious, he doesn't laugh anymore, he doesn't play sports anymore, he doesn't want to go out anymore. Something was lost in the Tshuvah. A part of him became what? Dead inside. A part of him became dead. And if Kook's going to address this idea that Tshuvah is not supposed to make you dead, Tshuvah is supposed to make you even more alive. Tshuvah is supposed to bring you with even more passion to life, more fire for life, more chiyas in life. Before we read Rav Kook inside, Rav Kook had a student, Rav Chalap, So Rav Nassan did for Rabbi Nachman, Rav Chanap did for Rav Kook. He tried to make Rav Kook more understandable. And there's a whole volume called Memarim. And there, Rav Chanap writes, there's a word we know called Ma'od. What does Ma'od mean? Very. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the Torah uses the term they were Ma'od. Sometimes it's talking about their wealth. They were very Ma'od in wealth. They were very, very rich. But Ma'od means they were very. They were passionate, fiery people. Sometimes it's heartbreaking. The firmer we are, the less life we have. The more religious the more we get into observance and halachic observance, the less fire we have in our Yiddishkeit. And sometimes the guy who knows less, he's the one Friday night dancing, not looking at his clock. He's the one full of that fire when it comes to topics of Har HaBayit, building Eretz Yisrael. He's the one full of fire and passion. And the guy who's all his life, he's so serious, he's so intense, that he seems to have lost that ma'od of his life. With all your strength, with all that power, with all that want, with all that desire went out from him. That passion of life went out. Jaime, you want to try it a little bit? I know how connected you are to Rav Kook, so we'll give it a try. Tshuvah.
התשובה מרימה את האדם למעלה מכל השפליות הנמצאות בעולם.
We have to do it sentence by sentence. The Tshuvah Mirima lifts up a person above all the low things of this world. In other words, the Tshuvah elevates you. If Shama gave an example like this, let's say all my life I live on ground floor on 42nd Street. So every single movie theater looks very attractive. Every flashing restaurant and the lights of the restaurant look, there's something draws you there. Then imagine I take you up to the top floor of the Empire State Building and I tell you to look down. That same movie theater looks very, very, very small and nothing. And that same non-kosher restaurant, doggy diner, doesn't look so attractive anymore. Because now I'm standing on that top of the world. I'm in a much higher place. So too, a lot of times, when we're not pre-Tshuvah, the world looks very, very attractive. And all those, quote, forbidden things are very, very what? Tempting and temptatious to me. But when I do Tshuvah, what happens? I'm lifted up to that top floor. I'm lifted up so high that I'm looking from so high above. All those little things that I was always drawn to no longer seem to be what? So attractive. Shlomo always used to say that before he goes into an ashram or to yoga, his thing is not to knock off the other religion or the other guru or the other way that he's teaching about spirituality, but to show the strongest light of Shabbos, the strongest light of Torah, that the person on his own realizes that this guru was holding a little flashlight, but Shlomo has with him what? He has a torch. And therefore, all the things that the guru was maybe talking about in the ashram are all what? Small crumbs compared to this great light. And so too, Tshuvah lifts a person up above all the loneliness that's what? Hanimsot balam. Continue, Chaimaya.
אם זה איננו נעשה זר אל העולם, אלא הוא מרומם עמו את העולם ואת החיים.
Okay, so this is very important. He doesn't become a zar. What's a zar mean? He doesn't become a stranger to the world. He doesn't alienate himself from the world. The world doesn't become a place of devoid of God. The world doesn't become a place that what? I'm running away from the world. And I'm ghettotizing myself more and more and closing myself off from any influence of the world. But that's not what's supposed to be. Elohu, Miromem, he lifts up with him at Tolan. He lifts up the worldliness. He lifts up the materialism, the tachayim and the life. Otam anitiyot, continue.
אותן הנטיות של החטא, הן מזדקקות בו.
Okay, so again, the same things that brought him to sin, the same attribute that seemed to be negative, that brought him to sin, now what happens? Mizdachech means becomes refined. And it's no longer being used in sin, but that attribute and that passion is being used now in what? Holiness. In other words, the Baal Tshuvah was running wild on Thursday night and Saturday night in town to Mike's place and to underground and to parties and being wild and crazy and drinking and smoking. Now he's dancing Simchas Torah. Now he's jumping up and down, and now he's mamish filled with his passion for life, and he's filled with his fire, and this fire in avodas Hashem. He's going to Rav Shlomo davening Friday night. He's running from the top minion. He's running to Raz and then to Korina, and then he's going to Mayanokos to start getting the best shachos, the best musaf, everything. He's taking the same passion, and he's using it in what? Fiery for what? Avodas Hashem.
רצון העז, הפורץ כל גבול, שגרם לחטא, הוא בעצמו נעשה כוח חי ופועל גדולות ונשגבות לטובה ולברכה.
So that ratzon, that will, that strong will, az, that fierce will, that had no borders and didn't know what it means to know, it didn't know what it means to stop, that caused him to sin, hu ba'atzmo na'asa koach chai, becomes a living power, and he could use it to reach great and high things for good and for blessing. Okay, let's for a second stop for this piece. Anyone have another page of Rav Kook here? Should be a fourth page. For those who don't have it, there must have been some problem with the photocopy machine. It didn't come out all the pages. But at the same time, I'm going to just read a little bit Od Zayin because it's also getting late. Yesh Chisaron, Od Zayin, I put a circle around it. You can look on if you don't have it. Let's just read this a little bit inside. Yesh Chisaron B'tchunata Shel Tshuvah. Chisaron means what? Lacking. Something's missing in this lower level of Tshuvah. Now right away, this word Rav Kook uses, Numucha, meaning that there's two levels of Tshuvah. He answers the question. He's really answering him what the Rambam knows. How could I be talking about not bearing your past and using this past passion and using it for holiness? What about the Rambam? What about Avraham Avinu who had to change his name and his place? So Rav Kook says that's Tshuvah Numucha. It's a lower level of Tshuvah. It's not the Tshuvah Ilah, the higher level of Tshuvah. Sometimes we also call it Tshuvah Mei. Ava, Tshuvah out of love. It's not. So he says when someone just gets stuck on the lower Tshuvah, of this lower Tshuvah, there's something missing in it. She machleshet et ritzono shel adam. It's machlish. What does machlish mean? The weak chalash is it weakens the desire of a person. Upogemet b'zeh et ishiyuto, and it blemishes his personality. It's pogem his ishiyut, his personality. You know, again, I'm sure you've seen it. Again, I have to be so careful because you can't stereotype. But so many times you see that person something happens to him in his personality. He lost the funness. He lost that fun side of him, that sense of humor. Something became so serious and so intense. It's hard to hang out with him anymore. It's hard to be in his presence. Or he's so removed that he doesn't even want to hang out with anyone of his past. And it actually blemishes his ishiyut, his personality. But he says this low level of tshuva gets filled when it ripens the tshuva and becomes complete. Because then it becomes one with this higher tshuva, tshuva elyon. Because the main kavana of tshuva is not to weaken the desire of a person and to break his passion and to break his personality, his ishi shel adam. Kaf aleph is ki'im, but rather dafka bi mutzritzono. It's supposed to strengthen his desire, l'agbarat ha'erech shel ishiyuto, and to strengthen his value and his ishiyut and his personality. Umitoch kach, when a Jew does his high level of tshuva, has donot mitapchot l'zchuyot, all the mistakes turn into what? Into merits. V'shuv rasha mirshato, and when the Rasha, the one who is doing evil, returns from his evilness, v'asa mishpat u'tzedakah, and now does righteousness and charitable and acts of justice, aleim hu yichya, the pasuk says, on those things he lives, meaning hu yichya, He's using the chiyas that he used to do evil. He's using that same passion of life. He's using it now in terms of what? Holiness, v'aleim hu yichya. And that he is living. Rav Kook always finishes an idea with putting it back to a pasuk in the V'yamuk Tuvim. And on that he lives. So this is a little bit the Torah I wanted to share tonight.
This is Tshuvah.
Tshuvah me'ava, Tshuvah ilah, Tshuvah elyona, we saw Rav Kook calls it. And this is also Rav Soloveitchik also uses the same idea. The lower Tshuvah is the Rambam Tshuvah of breaking away, burying your past, changing your name, changing your place. Yesterday he was sanui, hated, meshukatz, disgusting, mutuaf, an abomination. And today he's so what? Beloved before God. That's the lower level. But then that's sometimes how you have to start. But then when a person already has reached that level of the lower tshuva, then he has to take the passion and take it and bring it in. I want to put it into what we read on Shabbos. We read on Shabbos a pasuk that Rav Shlomo would darshan a lot, based on the Ishbitza, the Mea Shiloach. Lo takim lecha matzeva asher sanei Hashem Elokecha. Don't set up a matzeva that God hates. Now right away, there's an obvious question. Didn't Avram set up a matzeva? Yaakov made a matzeva. Don't we always come to Eretz Yisrael? You always hear people coming, I'm coming for Hakamat Matzeva. I'm going to Beit Shemesh for the Hakamat Matzeva. We Jews are very into matzevot. And what they're writing on the matzeva. So the Ishbitzer says, I don't want to deal with that question. But the Ishbitzer says, he also says, but the idea is repeated a lot throughout the Mea Shiloach. Don't make a Yiddishkeit a fixed Yiddishkeit. A Yiddishkeit that everything is set, that everything is like a matzeva, also means you put a matzeva up for someone, a monument for someone who's dead. Yiddishkeit has to be filled with life, with passion. It can't be a matzeva Yiddishkeit, where everything became so mundane, kimitzvahs anashim ulumada, like people are doing it day in and day out, it's come so by rote. There's no thought in it, there's no passion in it. And sometimes we have to become fluent in doing things. Shetagilenu b'taratecha. The other hand, the fluentness in doing it becomes that what? Becomes so meaningless. Even when you can do everything right, Rav Shlomo would say, but yet you're completely disconnected. And you're completely disconnected for everything. There's a pasuk in Yeshaya. The libi rachak mimeni. My heart was far away from what I was doing. It could be far away from the actions you're doing. I could even say, I said the blessing, I go to heaven, but I'm far away from anything I'm doing. I'm living in a state of disconnect. Yeah, I'm sorry. You had a question or comment?
When you say low Tshuvah, it's like negative connotation in low. So I don't know if after when you repeat just now, you said when you start it's like this. So I believe from Abraham Avinu, like first you change place and you change name. That he was keeping the fire of his father for idol worship and using all this stuff, and he's using this force to spread monotheism, to make a life, to make a family, to go in the land of Israel. So it's like I feel it for me and for people here, like we move here, start of the Tshuvah, we change place, or we go in the place another. So we come to and we change name, we go back to our Hebrew name. So I think it's the first step and second step.
Right.
And
so
when
still,
you say lower, I don't feel.
You don't like the term lower, okay.
If it's really lower,
if you stop like this, the Rambam is describing more tshuva for the masses. Rav Kook is describing a more higher form, an ideal form. A lot of times in halacha, in Jewish law, you have the same thing. There's halacha for everyone, and then there's something called amidat chasidut, something I want to reach beyond just what it says. Now, this is the baby step. This is the beginning of the tshuva process. Change your name, maybe change to certain eating things, or kashrut standard, or whatever else. Change your name, your location. Yesterday I was discussing. But at the same time, then there's something more than that, beyond that. I want to go deeper than that. I want to be able to take it way beyond just. So the Rambam wasn't per se writing a book of Chassidut, not Chassidut of people wearing just all black, but I'm talking about Chassidut of super pious. The Rambam was writing a book for halacha for the masses. Understand? He was writing Hilchot Tshuvah for the masses. But then we could reach this higher level or stage 2, maybe you want to call it, maybe instead of a lower level, stage 2 of Tshuvah, of taking that passion and taking that fire and taking that. A lot of times, by all the tzaddikim, they always say that when you're starting Tshuvah, what's your relationship with the world? The beginning has to be a sumeira and then a setov. It has to be removal of the evil and then starting good. But then again, the Baal Shem Tov a little bit skipped over, and he said the greatest asay tov in the world is, the greatest weapon against the Yetzer Hara is via asay tov. The greatest way to fight evil is to be in fire with love of God. The greatest way is not only to be mucking in my evil and fighting against evil and moving away from my evil. Sometimes it's by becoming this infinitely high first. And through that, like we said, we are lifted up from the lowness, and the lowness is no longer attractive. I'm able to, through my asay tov, to what? Fight off the sumera. So you could say stage 1, stage 2. You could say lower, higher. Or you could say that you don't even need this stage 1. I could right away jump to the stage 2 of this great what? Everyone has to, I could jump to the stage 2 through mamish what? Being and using this passion right away in holiness, and right away transferring it, and right away channeling it, that I don't have to what? I don't have to go through this first thing of the switching. But again, every person is different, When it comes to, every person has, every soul is different, and it's, everyone has to know.
It's a classic.
Right, it's definitely a classic thing. But again, does it stop there, or does it have to just be does it stop there? Now I remember Rabbi Risk. Let's talk in general. A lot of Rabbanim, they still go by the English names. Before they themselves had Tshuvah processes, and this one goes by the name Rabbi J. This one goes by Rabbi Steve. Rabbi sounds weird, but that's a sort of an idea that I'm taking my Americanized past and I'm using it a little bit in my kihila, etc. Someone else would say, "Don't you ever mention that name? I haven't used it since I did Tshuvah. Don't even remind me that I had that name on my passport or my driver's license." Different people use it, use it differently. But again, here Rav Kook, Rav Soloveitchik are talking about this next stage. But it's an excellent point that you're saying, and we all did that, myself included, and we all somewhat mishana makom and mishana, and that's definitely the beginning and of something strong, and that's why the Rambam wrote it, and that's why it's brought down in the Avraham Avinu. We can't be higher than him. At the same time, but I like what you say. He took that passion of smashing the idols, now use that passion turning on the world. Let's sing a little bit because we have to carve in the whole share. So I understand a little bit what I was saying at the beginning of the night. But return to whom you are. Don't bury that your Anochi. Don't bury that I. Don't bury the I of who you are. But take that I and now take it and get a little bit of a vision of what you can become, and how you could use your attributes that you have, and how you could use it in what? In unbelievable holiness. Anyway, the question you asked has so many levels. By Rav Nachman, he used to never talk about breaking a teva. We always say, he said, if you try to break one negative teva, one negative trait, then you have 2 negative traits that you have to deal with. Other tzaddikim, used to break. But at the same time, we got to sing. And we'll sing a little bit from Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, Kivakart.
Hay v'tavta kizma lechol yodnecha. Hay v'tavta kizma lechol yodnecha. Hay v'tavta
Thank you. Thank you very much from Simcha, and I want everybody to know also that the Bill Fargo charge for the fast teaching with the Tshuvah and the program, and I want you to know that there is going to be this coming Sunday, everybody, the 7th, yeah, we're having a special class with John Hackman, it's the 7th on Sunday. Here at 7:30. And then there will be another special class with the Catherine on the 17th. And I also want to tell you that we had a great class with the Freak yesterday, but I'm not sure on Glas of Schnitte continues next Sunday night in Glas of Schnitte. It's really